Good afternoon. We are going to learn about diuretics in today's class. So, at the end of the class, you should know various definitions, physiology of urine formation, and various factors modifying urine formation, classification of diuretics. In today's class, we are going to learn two classes of diuretics, thiazide diuretics and loop diuretics. In those two, we'll see mechanism of action, indications, side effects, drug interactions, and uses of diuretics. If we go back to physiology, first year physiology, functions of kidney are like daily 180 liters of fluid filtered through kidney every day. In this, all soluble constituents of blood minus the plasma proteins and lipids are filtered. And out of this 180 liters of fluid, 99% glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed. And out of this 180 liter, only 1.5 liter of urine is produced within 24 hours. So majority of fluid and filtrate is reabsorbed by kidney. Now if we see definitions, first definition is natriuresis. Natriuresis means excretion of sodium ions. Whenever sodium ions are excreted in urine, it is known as natriuresis. So drugs which are excreting sodium ions in urine are known as natriuretics. Most of the diuretics are natriuretic except osmotic diuretic. So all the diuretic except osmotic diuretics are natriuretics. Second is diuresis. Drugs which increase urine formation are known as diuretics. So definitely increase in urine formation is known as diuresis. Third one is caluresis. Drugs which are excreting out potassium ion is known as caluresis. Other functions of kidney. Kidney is also responsible for synthesis of erythropoietin, deficiency of which leads to anemia. It is also responsible for activation of vitamin D, and it is also responsible for synthesis of urokinase. That is one of the fibrinolytics naturally produced. Majority of diuretic drugs are used for various types of edema. Now if we see causes of generalized edema, like there are cardiac causes like congestive cardiac failure, renal causes like nephrotic syndrome, hepatic causes like cirrhosis of liver, nutritional causes like malnutrition, and many a times allergic reactions are also responsible for generalized edema. So in these conditions, diuretics are prescribed. And many a times there are certain drugs which can induce generalized edema. Diuretics are the drugs which cause a net loss of sodium ion and water in urine. So basic definitions, drugs which are increasing sodium ion and water loss in urine are known as diuretic, except osmotic diuretic which do not cause natriuresis. Osmotic diuretic do not have any effect on sodium excretion, but they increase water excretion, so they are known as diuretic. This osmotic diuretic causes increase in urine volume due to increased osmotic pressure in lumen of renal tubule and causes concomitant decrease in extracellular volume or blood volume. So that is diuretic. In order to understand the diuretic, we need to know the physiology of urine formation. There are three major steps are involved in urine formation. First one is glomerular filtration. Second is tubular reabsorption. And third one is active tubular secretion. As the name suggests, first one is glomerular filtration. So in case of glomerular filtration, majority of filtrate is filtered out from glomerulus. In case of tubular reabsorption, whatever is excreted out during glomerular filtration is again reabsorbed in tubular reabsorption. And third one is active tubular secretion. In active tubular secretion, some of the portion of this reabsorbed minerals and ions are again secreted into tubules, and ultimately it is excreted out via urine. Normal GFR is around 125 ml per minute or 180 liters per day, of which 99% gets reabsorbed and only 1.5 liter of urine is excreted daily. Now this is the process of urine formation. First one is glomerular filtration. Here all the filtrate is filtered out in glomerulus. Second one is tubular reabsorption. Some of the ions and minerals are again reabsorbed. And third one is tubular secretion or active tubular secretion, in which actively some of the ions or some of the portions is excreted out, and that is ultimately excreted into distal convoluted tubule, and through tubule it is going into collecting duct and excreted as a urine. Now if we see major sites of this urine formation, first of all proximal tubule. Proximal tubule is freely permeable to water. There is active absorption of NaCl, sodium bicarbonate, glucose, amino acids, organic solutes, followed by passive absorption of water. So basically it is very leaky, so it is also known as leaky tubule. 65 to 80% of the filtrate is reabsorbed, and most reabsorption is coupled to sodium ion movement. If we see percentage of filtrate reabsorbed in proximal convoluted tubules, 66% of sodium and water is reabsorbed in proximal convoluted tubules. Organic solutes like glucose and amino acid 100% are reabsorbed. Potassium ion 65%, urea 50%, and phosphate 80%. So this much portion is again reabsorbed in proximal convoluted tubule. Osmotic diuretic acts as a proximal convoluted tubule as well as also on loop of Henle, especially descending limb, by interposing a countervailing osmotic force. Second major site is loop of Henle. There are two portions, ascending limb and descending limb. In case of descending limb, it is very permeable to water, while thick ascending limb, it is impermeable to water but permeable to sodium with the help of sodium potassium 2 chloride pore transporter. About 25% of filtered sodium is absorbed here in loop of Henle. As the name suggests, loop diuretic acts here and blocks this pore transporter sodium potassium 2 chloride. Third major site is distal convoluted tubule. In the early distal tubule, 10% of sodium chloride is reabsorbed by NaCl symport transporter mechanism. On reaching the distal convoluted tubule, almost 90% of sodium is already reabsorbed and remaining 10% is again reabsorbed. Calcium excretion is also regulated in case of distal convoluted tubule with the help of parathormone, calcitriol. These are the hormones which increases absorption of calcium. Thiazides block this sodium chloride symport transporter system and act as this distal convoluted tubule. Thiazide with moderate efficacy block only 10% of sodium reabsorption. So you can see that the majority of sodium ion is reabsorbed at loop of Henle, where loop diuretic acts. while this thiazide which are acting at this distal convoluted tubule, they are blocking only 10% of sodium reabsorption. So efficacy wise, loop diuretics has more efficacy in comparison to thiazide diuretics. Next is collecting tubule and collecting duct. There are two major forces which are acting at this collecting tubule and collecting duct. First one is aldosterone, that is the hormone. Aldosterone receptors are there on membrane and they causes sodium absorption by sodium hydrogen potassium exchange. And second one is antidiuretic hormone, or also known as vasopressin. They act at collecting tubular epithelium and it makes this epithelium permeable to water. Basically water enters in through aquaporin 2. Now this is the figure showing nephron. This is a summary of urine formation. It starts with this renal corpuscle. There is production of filtrate. Second is proximal convoluted tubule. There is reabsorption of water, ions and all the organic nutrients. Then at distal convoluted tubule, there is secretion of ions, acids, drugs, toxins, and there is a variable reabsorption of water, sodium ions and calcium ions under hormonal control. Then we have got loop of Henle. There are two limbs, descending limb and ascending limb. In case of loop of Henle, there is further reabsorption of water in descending limb, while both sodium and chloride ion are reabsorbed in ascending limb. Then we have got collecting system. In collecting system, there is a collecting duct. There is a variable reabsorption of water and reabsorption or secretion of sodium, potassium, hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. And at last, in papillary duct, delivery of urine to minor calyx, and through which urine is excreted out from the body. This is again the tabular summary of all urine formation. Now, if we see relative magnitude of sodium reabsorption at various sites, in proximal tubule, around 65% of sodium ions are reabsorbed. In ascending loop of Henle, 25% are reabsorbed. At distal tubule, 9% is reabsorbed, and collecting duct, 1% is reabsorbed. So that is the urine formation part. If we see classification of diuretics, there are various types of diuretic. First of all, thiazide diuretics. In case of thiazide diuretics, there are two subclasses. One is thiazide themselves. There are two drugs, hydrochlorothiazide and benzthiazide. And second one is thiazide-like diuretic. The structure is different, but mechanism of action is same as hydrochlorothiazide. That is chlorthalidone, metazolazone, zipamide, indapamide and clopamide. Then there are loop diuretic, furosemide or furosemide, bumetanide, torasemide or torsemide, ethacrynic acid. These are loop diuretics. Then we have got potassium sparing diuretics. There are two subtypes. Aldosterone antagonists like spironolactone, canrenon and eplerenone. And there are directly acting potassium sparing diuretics. Basically they act by inhibition of sodium channel. These are triamterene and amiloride. Then we have got carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, astazolamide, brinzolamide and dorzolamide. Then we have got osmotic diuretic, mannitol, glycerin, urea, isosorbate. Then there are some newer class like SGLT2 inhibitor, that is basically used for as an anti-diabetic drug. and it is also causing diuresis, but it is approved for diabetes mellitus. So we have not included that drug in this classification part. If we see site of action of this various types of diuretics, osmotic diuretic acts here. Then in case of estrazolamide acts basically on bicarbonate metabolism. Then loop diuretic, as the name suggests, it acts at loop, ascending loop of Henle. Then thiazide diuretic, it acts at distal convoluted tubule. And this potassium sparing diuretic, it acts as collecting head. So depending on site, various transporter or various importers are involved. Say for example, at ascending loop of Henle, loop diuretic, it acts on sodium potassium 2 chlorides importer, while in case of distal convoluted tubule, thiazide acts via sodium chloride transporters. Now if we see, start with thiazide and thiazide-like diuretic. This is the simplified diagram of distal convoluted tubule. In distal convoluted tubule, one sodium ion get reabsorbed along with chloride ion, and this process is carried out by this sodium chloride symport co-transporter. So basically thiazide diuretic or thiazide-like diuretic inhibit the sodium chloride symport, and thereby it prevent reabsorption of sodium, and because of this sodium ions are excreted out, so there is natriuresis, and along with sodium ion water is also excreted out. So there is natriuresis and diuresis. Apart from sodium, here you can see sodium is exchanged with potassium ion, and calcium is also exchanged with sodium ion. So enhanced sodium excretion also leads to potassium loss in collecting duct. So apart from sodium, potassium ions are also excreted out, and one of the adverse effect or side effect of this thiazide-like diuretic is hypokalemia because of increased excretion of potassium ion. So basically thiazide-like diuretic causes loss of sodium and water in urine. Because of loss of potassium ion, there is hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis, and here sodium ions are exchanged along with calcium, so there will be increased calcium reabsorption because of sodium loss, so there will be hypercalcemia. Basically thiazide diuretic acts on early part of distal tubule. They inhibit sodium chloride sympporter and reabsorption and increase NaCl excretion. Basically 5 to 10% sodium ions are excreted out. Thiazide diuretics are medium efficacy diuretic because only 5 to 10% sodium ion is excreted out. So efficacy wise they are lower in comparison to loop diuretic. Sodium exchanges with potassium ion in distal convoluted tubule, so there will be potassium loss and ultimately there will be hypokalemia. Another thing with thiazide diuretic is they are not effective in very low GFR. If GFR is less than 30 ml per minute, it may reduce GFR further. So GFR needs to be more than 30 ml per minute. Metolazone, that is thiazide-like diuretic, it has got additional action on proximal tubule. Because of this additional action, it is also effective at low GFR and can be tried in case of refractory edema in which GFR is low. Thiazide diuretics have got hypotensive action. Because of sodium loss on chronic use, it is found that because of sodium loss, elasticity of vessel wall is reduced, and because of this, on chronic use, thiazide diuretic produces decrease in urine volume as well as decrease in sodium concentration in the blood, and because of this, there will be hypotensive action. There will be reduced calcium excretion, and because of this, it may precipitate hypercalcemia in patients of hyperparathyroidism and bone malignancy with metastasis. There will be increased magnesium excretion. Because of this hypokalemia, there will be hypercholeremic alkalosis. There will be hyperuricemia. Apart from sodium ion and water, uric acid is also excreted out, and ultimately there will be hyperuricemia. Hyperglycemia, it is might be because of thiazide diuretic inhibit insulin release, and ultimately there will be hyperglycemia. And hyperlipidemia. In case of hyperlipidemia, it is found that thiazide diuretic increases LDL level, increases cholesterol, and increases triglyceride level, and because of this, hyperlipidemia is seen in patients with thiazide diuretics. If we see other drugs in this class, chlorthalidone, it is used only for hypertension. It is long acting, T-half is around 50 hours. So patient compliance is very good in case of hypertensive patients. So chlorthalidone is used in case of hypertension. Metazoline is active even in low GFR. So many a times whenever GFR is low, it can be used. It can also be tried with furosemide, that is a loop diuretic as a additive drug, used mainly for edema and occasionally for hypertension. Then zipamide is a more strong diuretic and used for edema and hypertension. More incidence of hypokalemia and ventricular arrhythmia is seen with zipamide. In case of indapamide, it is extensively metabolized, and very less amount of indapamide reaches kidney, and used only as antihypertensive drug. If we see pharmacokinetic of thiazide diuretic, they are very well absorbed orally, rapidly acting. Within 60 minutes, thiazide diuretic starts acting. Thiazides are basically organic acids. So because of this organic acid, as they are organic acid, they are secreted into proximal tubule, and then their action is generated. They are partly excreted by hepatobiliary system, so they are excreted out in feces and urine. If we see uses of thiazide diuretic, first of all, hypertension, hydrochlorothiazide and indapamide. We are starting with low dose of thiazide diuretic, and gradually, depending on response, we are titrating the dose so that optimum dose can be reached. Second is all types of edema, whether it is cardiac edema, hepatic edema or renal edema. Edema because of congestive cardiac failure, liver cirrhosis or nephrotic syndrome, thiazide diuretics are used. Keep in mind that thiazide diuretics are medium efficacy diuretics. So depending on the action needed, you will have to choose whether to go for thiazide diuretic or loop diuretic. So basically they are less efficacious than loop diuretics and useful for maintenance therapy especially. Other uses: hypercalciuria and renal calcium storm. Hypercalciuria. Then thiazide diuretics are also useful in case of diabetic insipidus, and even in case of diabetes insipidus, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus responds better. It's a paradoxical use. You know that in case of diabetes insipidus, increased urine formation is there, and thiazide themselves are increasing urine formation. But somehow, because of some unknown action, they are reducing GFR, or because of more complete reabsorption in proximal tubule, they are reducing urine formation up to 50% in patients of diabetes insipidus. So this is one of the paradoxical uses of diuretics. Even in case of diabetes insipidus, in which urine formation is increased, you are using diuretic drug to decrease the urine formation. In case of neurogenic diabetes insipidus, desmopressin is preferred, but thiazides are more convenient and cheaper than desmopressin. So many times, even in case of neurogenic diabetes insipidus, they are preferred. Amiloride is the drug of choice for lithium-induced nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. And metolazone is useful even when GFR is low, as low as 15 ml per minute. If we see adverse effects, first adverse effect is hyperuricemia. In case of thiazide diuretic, apart from sodium ion also take uric acid along with it, and because of this, uric acid excretion is more in case of with thiazide diuretic. So ultimately it leads to hyperuricemia. And second hyper is hyperglycemia, because of decreased insulin release, and there will be hyperglycemia. So basically glucose tolerance is altered because of thiazide diuretic. So you should be cautious whenever you are prescribing thiazide diuretic. In case of diabetes mellitus patients, or pre-diabetic patients, or patients who are sitting on the fence, which may convert into diabetes mellitus. Third hyper is hyperlipidemia. In case of hyperlipidemia, there will be increased LDL, increased total cholesterol, and increased triglyceride level, and ultimately it leads to hyperlipidemia. Hypercalcemia, because of reduced calcium excretion, there will be hypercalcemia. Then hyponatremia, because of as sodium ion is lost, so sodium concentration is decreased, so hyponatremia. Potassium ions are also lost, so hypokalemia. Then hypomagnesemia, as magnesium ions are lost along with calcium. Because of loss of potassium ion and increase calcium ion, there will be hypercholoremic alkalosis. Then many a times hypersensitivity reactions are seen, like rashes, allergies, and it may precipitate renal failure. And it is found that they are not safe in pregnancy. In fact, all diuretics are not safe in pregnancy. So you should not prescribe diuretics in pregnancy. If we see summary of thiazide diuretic, basically thiazide diuretics are medium efficacy diuretics. They act by inhibiting sodium chloride's import, cause more hyperuricemia and hypokalemia than loop diuretics. Not effective in patients with renal dysfunction, decrease calcium excretion and increase magnesium excretion, and duration of excretion for various types of thiazide diuretics varies between 6 to 48 hours. So that is thiazide diuretic. Next is loop diuretics. As the name suggests, Loop diuretic acts on loop of Henle. Agents, there is furosemide or furosemide, bumetanide, torsemide or torasemide, ethacrynic acid. These are the agents which are known as loop diuretic. Loop diuretics are also known as high ceiling diuretics. Loop diuretic are also known as high ceiling diuretic. As you can see in this graph, on x-axis there is fractional excretion of sodium in percentage, while on x-axis there is a log diuretic urinary excretion rate. Threshold wise, both are at almost same level. Loop diuretic altered dose response relationship and maximal response. If you see thiazide diuretic, more amount of thiazide diuretic is required for producing same response. At 5% sodium excretion, maximum amount of thiazide diuretic are required. But at almost minimal level, loop diuretic excrete out 5% of sodium ion. And you can see as you increase the dose of loop diuretic, excretion of sodium ion increases, and ultimately at very high ceiling is reached at very high level in comparison to thiazide diuretic. As the ceiling of sodium excretion is very high in comparison to other diuretic, loop diuretics are also known as high ceiling diuretics. Basically, furosemide is sulfonamide derivative. Sulfonamides are one of the antimicrobial agents. Furosemide is most popular and powerful loop diuretic. Generally causes greater diuresis than thiazides, and they are used whenever it is found that thiazide diuretics are insufficient. So whenever you want more diuretic action, loop diuretics are preferred in comparison to thiazide diuretic. They can enhance calcium excretion as well as magnesium excretion. They enter tubular lumen via proximal tubular secretion because body treats them as a toxic drug. And drugs that block this secretion reduces efficacy of this loop diuretic. So basically we have got one drug known as probenecid. Probenecid inhibits this tubular secretion of loop diuretic. Thereby whenever loop diuretics are combined with probenecid, their efficacy is reduced. So never combine probenecid with loop diuretic. Probenecid is mainly prescribed for gout, as well as many times it is combined with penicillin. So make sure your patient is not on probenecid if he is suffering from gout, or make sure if you are prescribing probenecid along with penicillin, do not prescribe this drug along with loop diuretics. You see, mechanism of action, furosemide blocks sodium potassium fluoride sympod in the ascending loop of Henle, and thereby it inhibits sodium chloride excretion. It also enhances excretion of potassium ion, calcium ion and magnesium ion. But this calcium ion is again reabsorbed in the distal tubule. Prolonged use can cause hypomagnesemia because of this loss of magnesium ion, and it increases reabsorption of uric acid. There is also vasodilatation in renal vasculature and increases renal blood flow. This is the graphical representation of mechanism of action of loop diuretic. This is the simplified diagram of loop of Henle. So this loop diuretic furosemide inhibit this sodium potassium 2 chloride symport, and thereby by inhibiting this symporter, it inhibiting the reabsorption of sodium chloride, and thereby this sodium chloride is excreted out in the urine, and along with sodium chloride there is natriuresis, and because of natriuresis there is diuresis. Furosemide is very rapidly acting and short acting. It can be given by multiple route, intramuscular, intravenous and oral. So depending on patient condition and requirement, you can choose appropriate route. Given intravenously, 10 mg acts within 2 to 5 minutes. Orally 40 mg, it takes for 20 to 40 minutes and produce up to 10 liter of urine per day. It is effective even in patients with severe renal failure. Furosemide causes peripheral venous dilatation, and thereby it relieves left ventricular failure and pulmonary edema. It causes calcium and magnesium excretion through urine, hyperuricemia and hypokalemia, and it may cause ototoxicity. So whenever you are prescribing furosemide, make sure you are not prescribing any other drug which can cause ototoxicity, like aminoglycoside antimicrobial agents. If agents which are causing ototoxicity are combined, there might be additive ototoxicity, and there might be permanent damage. Dose 20 to 80 milligram once a day in the morning. Make sure you are prescribing this drug in the morning, so at night patient will be at rest, so that he or she may not be disturbed because of urinary urgency. Second one is bumetanide. Action wise it is similar to furosemide, but 40 times more potent, and can respond to patients who are resistant to furosemide. And it can also be used in patients who are allergic to furosemide. So whenever furosemide cannot act because of allergic reason, or patient have become resistant to furosemide, you can use bumetanide. It is better tolerated because the adverse effects like hypokalemia, ototoxicity, hyperglycemia, hyperuricemia are milder, but it may cause myopathy. It is used in case of congestive heart failure and pulmonary edema and left ventricular failure because of pulmonary edema. As it is more potent, dose wise you can say only 1 to 5 milligram is sufficient OD in the morning in comparison to furosemide, for which dose was 10 to 80 milligram per day. Torsemide or torsemide, it is similar to furosemide, and it is 3 times more potent than furosemide. It is longer acting and used in generalized edema and hypertension. Preferably for hypertension, we are using thiazide like diuretic, but if severe hypertension is there, we can always go for loop diuretics. If we see uses of loop diuretics, first of all, generalized edema, whether it is cardiac edema, hepatic edema or nephrotic edema. In case of acute renal failure and chronic renal failure, large doses of these loop diuretics are needed. Then in case of acute pulmonary edema, as it is relieving pulmonary congestion, acute pulmonary edema, it is preferred. Left ventricular failure, then they are also preferred in case of cerebral edema, especially cerebral edema because of road traffic accident or head injury patients. Then many types of poisoning we need to do post diuresis, like in poisoning due to fluoride, iodide, bromide. Whenever we need to do forced diuresis, furosemide is given along with saline infusion, and that will help to clear out this poison from the body rapidly. Then in case of hypertension, especially with renal impairment, loop diuretics are preferred. In case of primary hypertension, thiazides are the preferred drug among diuretic. But whenever hypertension is associated with renal impairment, loop diuretics are more preferred in comparison to thiazide. Then they are also useful in case of acute hypercalcemia and hyperkalemia. See, adverse effect of this loop diuretic, as potassium excretion is there, hypokalemia is there, and because of hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis can develop in patients. Hypokalemia should be particularly prevented in post-MI patients and in patients who are receiving digitalis for fear of developing arrhythmias. Then as sodium ions are excreted, hyponatremia is there, as they are high ceiling diuretic, more fluid loss is there, and because of this hypovolemia might develop. Because of hypovolemia and hyponatremia, hypotension can develop and ultimately dehydration can develop. Calcium loss is also there, so there is hypocalcemia is there. In case of thiazide-like diuretic, hypercalcemia was there as one of the adverse effects, while here hypocalcemia is there. Then hypomagnesemia, same as thiazide diuretic, magnesium ions are lost, so hypomagnesemia. Then same as thiazide, hyperuricemia, hyperglycemia and ototoxicity. And allergic reactions like skin rashes can occur along with this loop diuretics. If we see drug interactions, as they are causing hyponatremia, and you very well know that in case of hypertension we are asking our patient to restrict salt restriction. So by causing hyponatremia, it can potentiate the action of other antihypertensive drug. So patient can develop hypotension. Hypokalemia can develop by diuretic, and it can cause digitalis toxicity, as well as because of hypokalemia arrhythmias can develop. Then furosemide, if combined with aminoglycoside, that is one of the antimicrobial agents. Aminoglycoside have major adverse effect of ototoxicity and nephrotoxicity. So there will be synergistic action of this furosemide and aminoglycoside, and more ototoxicity and nephrotoxicity can develop in patient. Then it is found that along with cotrimoxazole, this furosemide can cause thrombocytopenia. Cotrimoxazole is also one of the antimicrobial agent. Then along with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, furosemide, if combined with furosemide, then this NSAID blunts actions of furosemide by action through prostaglandins. So that is loop diuretic. In summary of loop diuretic basically acts on loop of Henle, and on loop of Henle they inhibit sodium chloride to transfer sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter, and thereby it inhibits NaCl reabsorption, and that sodium is excreted out and there will be diuresis. So you should remember what are the various steps of urine formation and at which steps various diuretic drugs are acting. Thiazides are medium efficacy diuretics. In comparison to loop diuretics, they are majority preferred in case of essential hypertension or primary hypertension. While loop diuretics, they are higher capacity diuretic, or also known as high ceiling diuretics, and even in case of renal failure, loop diuretics are useful. So, thank you. We'll continue this class tomorrow also, and we'll take remaining diuretic in next class.